Welcome. If you have found your way to this video today, it is highly likely that you are searching for something the modern world promises, but rarely delivers true, unshakable peace. We live in an era defined by a relentless, overwhelming pace. Our days are saturated with endless notifications, breaking news, economic uncertainties, and personal trials. Anxiety has become the background noise of our daily existence, a quiet hum of worry that follows us from the moment we wake to the moment we finally close our eyes at night. We build physical walls, purchase security systems, and accumulate wealth, all in a desperate attempt to feel safe. Yet, deep within our souls, we remain acutely aware of our own profound vulnerability. But what if there was a place of absolute safety? What if there was a fortress not made of brick and mortar, but of eternal, unyielding spirit? Thousands of years ago, a psalmist penned a piece of poetry that has served as a spiritual anchor for millions of people across centuries, cultures, and continents. It is a song of supreme confidence in the face of terror, disease, and conflict. It is Psalm 91. Today we are going to embark on a deep, meditative journey into the very first two verses of this magnificent chapter. We will unpack the rich theology, the ancient Hebrew context, and the profound, life-altering promises contained within these lines. Whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God, in whom I trust. These two sentences form the bedrock of everything that follows in the rest of the psalm. They are not merely an ancient poem, they are a divine invitation. They are a roadmap leading us out of the wilderness of human anxiety and into the impenetrable fortress of God's presence. In this video, we will explore this invitation step by step. We will discover what it means to dwell, what it means to rest, the immense power of the God we serve, and how we can personally claim these promises over our own lives. Let us step over the threshold and examine the first profound promise of this text. Whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High. Notice immediately the inclusivity of the opening word, whoever. This promise is not locked away for a spiritual elite. It is not reserved for the ancient priests, the perfect, or the untroubled. It is an open, standing invitation to anyone willing to accept the conditions. But the condition is highly specific. The promise of protection is inextricably linked to a specific action dwelling. In the original Hebrew, the word translated as dwells is yashav. This is not a transient word. It does not mean to briefly visit, to pass through, or to occasionally drop in. Yashav means to sit down, to remain, to settle, to marry into, and to make a permanent home. In our spiritual lives, many of us treat God like a hotel or an emergency room. We visit Him for an hour on Sunday mornings, or we rush to His waiting room when a crisis strikes, a sudden illness, a financial collapse, a relational breakdown. We cry out for His shelter in the storm, but the moment the rain stops, we pack our bags and move back out into the world, relying on our own strength. But Psalm 91 is not written for the spiritual visitor. It is written for the inhabitant. To dwell means that you take up permanent residence in the presence of God. You orient your entire life, your decisions, your thoughts, and your affections around Him. And where are we called to dwell? In the shelter of the Most High. Some translations call this the secret place. The Hebrew word is seta, meaning a hiding place, a covert, a place of profound secrecy. Think of a hidden cave on the side of a mountain, invisible to the predators roaming the valley below. When you dwell in God's secret place, you are hidden from the spiritual assaults of the enemy. The chaos of the world may swirl around you, but it cannot access the core of who you are, because your life is hidden in Him. The psalmist describes the owner of this shelter, using a very specific name for God the Most High. In Hebrew, this is Elyon. This title emphasizes God's absolute supremacy, His supreme elevation above all things. He is not just a high power, He is the Most High. When you grasp the reality of Elyon, your perspective on your problems fundamentally shifts. In the ancient world, people believed in many local gods, spirits, and principalities. By using the title Elyon, the psalmist is making a radical declaration of sovereignty. Whatever is threatening you today, be it a medical diagnosis, an economic downturn, a malicious rumor, or a deep-seated fear, it has a name. But its name is not the highest name. If God is the Most High, then every other power, every other threat, every other authority in the universe must look up to Him and bow in submission. Therefore, when you are hidden in the shelter of Elyon, you are shielded by the supreme authority of the cosmos. No earthly or spiritual force can break down the door of the Most High. As we move to the second half of verse 1, the psalmist deepens the imagery. Whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. Having established the secret place as our permanent dwelling, the scripture now reveals the profound benefit of living their rest. The Hebrew word used here for rest is luan, which literally means to lodge, to stop for the night, or to pass the night securely. Think about the vulnerability required to sleep. When you close your eyes at night, you are completely defenseless. You lay down your tools, your weapons, your work, and your vigilance. You can only truly sleep when you believe you are in a safe environment. To rest in God's shadow means to bring your anxious, striving, exhausted soul into His presence. And finally, let your guard down. It is the cessation of spiritual panic. It is a profound, trusting surrender, knowing that the watchman of your soul neither slumbers nor sleeps. And where does this deep, restorative sleep take place? In the shadow. A shadow is one of the most intimate metaphors in all of Scripture. Consider the physics of a shadow for a moment. To be in someone's shadow, you cannot be a mile away from them. You cannot even be 100 yards away. To stand in a shadow, you must be in close, immediate proximity to the one casting it. You have to walk where they walk, stop where they stop, and stay intimately near to them. When the scorching heat of life beats down upon us, the heat of judgment, the heat of tragedy, the heat of overwhelming pressure, God does not necessarily turn off the sun. Instead, He invites us to step closer to Him. The shadow provides instant cooling relief. Furthermore, a shadow implies an obstruction of light and heat. For the shadow to fall on you, the one casting the shadow must take the brunt of the blazing heat. The Most High intercepts the scorching rays of your trials, absorbing the intensity so that you only experience the cool, calm shade of His presence. But you must choose to step into it. If you wander away from His presence, seeking to solve your problems in your own frantic strength, you step out of the shade and back into the scorching desert of self-reliance. True rest is found exclusively in close proximity to the Creator. As we bask in the gentle coolness of the shadow, we must come to understand the nature of the one who is casting it. The psalmist shifts his language once again, revealing another facet of God's character. We are resting in the shadow of the Almighty. In the ancient Hebrew text, this name is Shaddai, El Shaddai. This is one of the oldest and most revered names for God in the biblical tradition. It is the name God used when he revealed himself to the patriarchs, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, long before Moses knew him as Yahweh. The root meaning of Shaddai is often debated among scholars, but it carries two incredibly powerful connotations that work in perfect harmony. First, it is connected to a word meaning mountain. God is the immovable mountain, possessing raw, overpowering, and terrifying strength. He is the God of ultimate might, the invincible warrior who can level cities, part seas, and scatter armies with a single breath. Second, Shaddai is also linked to the Hebrew word for a mother's breast, carrying the profound connotation of being the all-sufficient one, the source of all nourishment, life, and tender provision. When you combine these two concepts, you get a breathtaking picture of the God who is protecting you. He is fiercely powerful, yet infinitely tender. He is the immovable mountain who provides complete nourishment for his children. Why is it so vital that the psalmist uses the name Shaddai here? Because a shelter is only as secure as the power of the one who guards it. If you are hiding behind a shield made of cardboard, you will not be able to rest, no matter how close you stand to it. The enemy's arrows will easily pierce it. But when you realize that your shadow is cast by Shaddai, the Almighty, your fear dissolves into faith. There is no force in the physical universe, no spiritual principality, no political regime, and no microscopic disease that is more powerful than the Almighty. He possesses all power, all wisdom, and all authority. When you are resting in his shadow, you are not hoping for the best. You are secured by omnipotence itself. The fortress is impregnable because the architect and the guard is El Shaddai. The storms of life will undoubtedly howl outside the walls of the secret place. The winds will batter the door. The enemy will rage. But the Almighty stands resolute, and in his shadow you are utterly, perfectly secure. Up to this point in the psalm, we have been looking at a universal truth. Verse 1 is a statement of spiritual fact, using the word whoever. It outlines the mechanics of God's protection. But theology, the study of who God is, must eventually move from the head to the heart. It is not enough to simply know about the shelter. You must personally walk through the door. This brings us to the pivotal, magnificent shift in verse 2. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God, in whom I trust. Notice the dramatic shift in pronouns. The psalmist moves from the general whoever to the intensely personal I, and he doesn't just think it. He doesn't just hope for it. He speaks it out loud. I will say of the Lord. There is profound transformative power in the spoken declaration of faith. When we face terrifying circumstances, our natural instinct is to speak our fears. We vocalize our anxiety. We complain about our vulnerabilities, and we agree with the enemy's narrative of despair. But the psalmist teaches us a different way of doing spiritual warfare. We must open our mouths and declare the protective nature of God over our own lives. Your faith must find its voice. Listen to the layered defense the psalmist claims. He is my refuge and my fortress. These are two distinct military terms. A refuge, mahseh, in Hebrew, is a place you flee to for quick, immediate shelter from a sudden rainstorm or an unexpected ambush. It represents God's immediate availability when trouble strikes without warning. A fortress, on the other hand, Metsudah, is a heavily fortified, elevated stronghold. It is stocked with provisions, surrounded by thick walls, and designed to withstand a prolonged, exhausting siege. The psalmist is declaring, whether I am facing a sudden, shocking crisis or a long, drawn-out battle that takes years to fight, God is exactly the type of protection I need. He is the quick shelter for the sudden storm and the impenetrable fortress for the long war. But the climax of this verse, and perhaps the most beautiful phrase in the entire psalm, is found in the final few words, "My God, in whom I trust." He does not say, "the God of my ancestors," or "the God of the universe." He says, "My God, Elohai." This is the language of a deeply personal, intimate covenant. This protection is not a mechanical transaction. It is not a magical incantation or a lucky charm. It is the byproduct of a living, breathing, trusting relationship. Protection is found in connection. The psalmist trusts God not just because God is powerful, but because God is his. When you truly know the character of the one who holds the universe, trusting him becomes the most natural, logical response of your heart. As we bring this meditation to a close, we must pause and ask ourselves a vital, searching question. Where are you living today? Are you living in the open plains of anxiety, exposed to the harsh winds of the 24-hour news cycle, the pressures of society, and the fears of the unknown? Are you frantically trying to build your own shelter out of wealth, status, or control, hoping it will be strong enough to withstand the storms of life? Psalm 91 offers you a better way. The door to the secret place is open. The Most High, the Supreme Sovereign of the universe, is inviting you to come inside and sit down. El Shaddai, the Almighty, is offering to cast his immense, cooling shadow over your exhausted life. But you must choose to dwell there. You must stop striving, step into his presence, and remain. And as you do, I encourage you to use your voice today. Do not let fear have the final word in your mind. Speak verse 2 over your family, your health, your finances, and your future. Say it right now, wherever you are watching this. Lord, you are my refuge. You are my fortress. You are my God, and in you I place my absolute trust. May you walk in the profound peace that comes from being hidden in the Most High. May your mind find true restorative rest in the shadow of the Almighty. And may you know, deeply and personally, the unyielding love of the God who defends you. Thank you for joining me on this journey into Scripture. If this message brought peace to your heart today, please return to it whenever the storms of life begin to howl. Grace and peace be with you.